This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. My name is Becca Dukes, and we are excited to bring more information to you as an empowered individual that helps you make wiser choices. Because I find for myself, if I understand why I need to be doing something, then it makes it easier for me to follow instructions. Well, today is going to be a fantastic day as we're going to be looking at the food pyramid. Okay, there's been so many different changes, but the most recent one, our guest has dug deep and diving deep into this food pyramid, and I just can't wait to hear how she is presenting it for us. So, folks, if you were invited to this program by somebody specific, make sure that you get back with them. They cared enough about you, and they are your person. They're the ones that you need to get back to, say what you liked best about the show. And also, if you have any questions, it's a possibility that they may be a health coach, a health advocate, somebody that just really has a heart to help people find a better health journey. And they can help you get started on that, especially with the products. So again, if you were invited to this program by somebody specific, make sure that you get back with them and tell them thank you. Now, if you found us all on your own, we do have a call team of certified holistic health coaches standing by at 855-949-3377. Again, that's 855-949-3377 there to take your questions if you are not already working with somebody. Now, folks, this program is being sponsored by dailywithdoc.com, where you'll be able to go to our website, sign up for our email list, find previous episodes and articles to give you even more tools to put in your toolbox. Now, today's guest, I absolutely appreciate. She and I have had a little bit of the same upbringing and still have that heart for not just animals, but people, and taking this whole nutrition thing really serious. So today we have Dr. Judy Reynolds back with us. She has decades of experience in nutrition science, research, and education. She earned her PhD in nutrition from Texas A&M University and has spent her career studying bone health, mineral metabolism, and how nutrition truly impacts performance and long-term well-being. She's not only taught at the university level and presented across the United States and Canada, but she also served as an official reviewer for the National Research Council's nutrient requirements, considered the gold star in nutrition science. That's the level of expertise that she's bringing to the table for us today, folks. But what I really appreciate about Dr. Judy Reynolds is her passion for making complex science understandable and practical without losing the science part of it. And she's dedicated her career to helping people apply sound nutritional principles in real life. So today, like I said, she's going to be going deep into the new food pyramid, what it means, what's changed, and what we should be paying attention to. So Dr. Judy, welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. I hope you're having a fantastic 2026. How are you today?
Thanks, Becca. I am very glad to be here. A nice sunny day, warmed up a little bit. So we've had some crazy weather lately, but yes. And this topic is just it's one of those things that all of us, if we thought about this a few years back, we would have never believed this could happen, because a lot of the things that we've been talking about that we should do in our own diets and for our own health have just gotten a lot better because of this. And I'll go into detail about who needs to, where do we get our information? Who does this help? What's it for? But there is a history of the food pyramid. And so I'm going to go a little behind all of that, and then the food pyramid itself and that kind of thing for history. So thanks again for the opportunity to come. And
Thank you.
Are we ready to go?
I'm going to just let you roll with it. I know you have a presentation. So Dr. Judy Reynolds, take it away.
All righty. And we'll see how well my sometimes my pointer, which I need in order to advance the slides, likes to take a nap here and there, but we'll assume the best for today. Okay, so why, what is the purpose and what is the history? And we'll go on here. I'm going to start out quite a bit before the food pyramid, so that we can just trying to fix this, but it's not going to work. It looks like, okay, 1 second. All right. Okay, so in the Wallach Revolution book, I've pulled out some things from there that I want to start, because they start before we actually even have a food pyramid, but it makes sense. So if we go way back in the history of people, we know that from observations and experience, people obviously learned what was around them and what would work and what would be good to eat and not eat, and put on our skin or whatever, those kinds of things. And so that was ancient history, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, but we knew that plants had healing properties. We knew that that's where we should be getting the things that we need, is from plants and animals. Well, in 1821, the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy was created, and what ended up happening there is their goal was to patent things so that they could make money on them, because you can't take something in nature and patent it. You have to create something new. So that's what that whole point was about. And then 1899, they trademarked aspirin. And in that time frame, from 1821 to 1899, they already had 84 manufacturers of pharmaceuticals. They had already been created, and they were competing with each other for all that money. And there was a huge amount of money, because the thing is, when people are in pain, or if they have a major issue and they find that they can take a pill to fix it, people just love that. I mean, it's just like the greatest thing that could ever happen. And so, it was really a big deal. But what people didn't realize, of course, is that just taking away the pain doesn't work. It's not stopping the problem, which we'll go into later also. But so look how fast it grew. By the 1930s, over 400 manufacturers were competing with each other in order to sell things on the, sell drugs, make all that huge money that was available. So then, of course, you're going to have some of those people were unscrupulous. In other words, they were doing some unsafe drugs, and there were actually about 100 poisonings, and this is all from the Wallach Revolution book. So there were about 100 poisonings with actual antifreeze, diethylene glycol, because they were just putting it in some of these compounds and not paying attention to what was happening when they did that, and people got sick. So the FDA was started, and from the very beginning, its mission was to rid big pharma, the big pharma market, all that money they could make, of the small competitors. So what ended up, and of course that was because of the perceived threat from those people getting injured, those 100 people that got hurt. There was a threat, and they decided they wanted to worry about safety. But what they really wanted to do was have a monopoly, have control. So they used that perceived threat of things being unsafe, drug contamination and things. And so there were amendments to the Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act that did two huge things. They grandfathered in all of the current drugs. So whether they were tested or not, safe or not, or anything, they all came in. They're all approved. And then they required extremely costly regulations and tests and trials and everything for anything that was a new drug. And therefore, it was going to be impossible for people to take something simple, take just a plant, and do anything with it, because you would have to prove with huge amounts of money that people just didn't have. So it really started to take out all that small market of people that were, the healers, the people with the wisdom, knowing for a long time what was going on. So here we're going to jump forward to this book. And this book is actually 2005 was written. And it was the previous newest pyramid before the one we have now, or at least one of them. But what I liked about this book is it gave us a little real quick history right in this book. So I'm going to start from there. But this was the one where they decided to add exercise to it in 2005. So let's do the history from that. Okay, so the United States Department of Agriculture was created by President Abraham Lincoln in 1862. And it was meant to be the People's Department. So it was meant to be for the people. And back then, half of Americans were farmers, more than half. So you can imagine these farmers are out there growing their own food. And there aren't all these processed foods and everything that we have today to go to a grocery store. So there was a different version of health back then. So in 2005, when this book was written, they say about 1% of Americans were farmers. Well, that's a big difference. So beneath that USDA, you have the Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services Department, and that administers the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion. And the goal there is it links scientific research to consumers' needs. So basically, if we go back, well, where does this scientific research come from? There are a couple of main places, but universities, colleges have departments where they get money, and most of the money they get is actually coming from industry. So it's coming from someone who is selling you something, and then they're spending their money, and it goes to the university, or it goes privately somewhere. And that money then is going to be behind this research. So we have to think about, is that a good source? Is that a biased source? And then what they do after they've pulled research, they go and look in journals. Usually universities will publish in specific journals. You have like the Journal of Diabetes and the Journal of the American Chemical Society, or whatever, thousands of journals. So then people are looking at what should people eat, and they'll go through these journals and they'll pull the research, but they're pulling the research that they want to use. Okay, So then they distribute these science-based dietary guidelines, which became my pyramid. Okay, so the creation of the USDA, and this is after the Civil War, President Lincoln trying to help people, but it's so far past what, everything is like today. So that's what we're dealing with. Okay, so the first thing, it wasn't actually a pyramid, it was in 1943, and they called it the square meal. So they had a square with 4 parts. They had 4 basic groups: meat, vegetable or fruit, starch, and milk. Those are the 4 groups. Now, isn't that interesting? Those are the things that they thought were the most important. And the goal was to help citizens achieve better nutrition during the war shortages. So, people were worried about everybody getting enough to eat. And so these 4 groups were recommended 3 times a day. And of course, they basically, there's a lot more detail on it, on how much everybody should have of each different thing and stuff like that. So not a lot of detail necessary here either. But since then, Americans were getting fatter. So what was wrong, or what was the problem? So in 1992, they came up with the first pyramid. And here, what they realized, that you can't just say, these are the 4 groups that we're going to eat from. You have to give more detail. But here's where you can see, instead of people growing their own food mostly, and most of the things in those categories, look at the bottom of the pyramid. And all of those are highly processed foods. And they were saying 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. Then they kept their fruit and vegetables up on the next tier, 3 to 5 vegetables, 2 to 4 fruits a day. And then they still kept their 2 to 3 servings of dairy and 2 to 3 servings, and they put meat, poultry, fish, legumes, eggs, and nuts all as protein. And they didn't realize it, but they were also putting healthy fats in there. It was also healthy fats, because eggs, nuts, poultry, fish, meat all have healthy fats and proteins. And also the dairy does. And so then at the very top, they realized, well, there are oils, and there is fat, and there are sweets and things like that. Just don't use them that much. Use them sparingly. Okay, so that made some kind of sense. And this is interesting, that was in this book. So I thought I'd just put this page in here too. It says health conditions associated with poor eating habits. Okay, you eat poorly, you're not getting the nutrients your body needs. Diabetes, heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, gallbladder disease, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, iron deficiency anemia, sleep apnea and other breathing problems, uterine cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, kidney cancer, dyslipidemia, which is fats in the blood that are incorrect, constipation, high blood cholesterol, they were already starting to talk about that, menstrual irregularities, excess body and facial hair, incontinence, depression, and pregnancy complications. Wow. So what you eat affects your health. 1992, we knew it, but we had already had one big problem that I'll talk about in a minute. And that is the demonization of saturated fats, cholesterol, and those healthy things that we had been eating before that. So then in 2005, the issue they had was, we forgot exercise, because everybody's getting fat and we know we have to exercise and all of that. And I don't have the color one, but these were each different colors. And so this would be that narrow one here of sweets. But each one of these was a different color, and it represented, oh, you might need a lot of some of these or less. So it was a different way to look at it, but it didn't make a lot of sense, and it didn't give you much detail. So there we are in 2005. Okay, here's the big new one. Now, this has just been announced within the last couple of months, and they're really working on it. There isn't a lot of huge detail in it, but what you can see for sure is that this new pyramid is what we call upside down, but it's not just that. At the top, the things we need the most of, we have our healthy meats. We have our butter, we have dairy, we have salmon, turkey, milk, whole milk. And that's a huge thing, eggs and all those things. And then we also have our vegetables over here. Pointer's going crazy. Yeah, the pointer isn't even showing up for you guys. Or is it? Okay. So we have our vegetables and things up there, and then we get down through the middle, and we've got our nuts and more fruits and all those kinds of things. But at the very bottom, a lot less of the bread and the pasta and the grains. And for more information on this, you can go to the USDA, go to HHS, and you can go to realfood.gov, and they're going to have a lot more detail on that. But this is a huge monumental shift, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the best thing that's happened since at least early 1900s, because it makes more sense for what we really want to be doing. So the other thing they're doing is saying you got to prioritize protein. And this is a huge thing that people haven't been aware of or haven't thought that much about. When you do all these processed foods, we've been losing protein and high quality protein. So they're recommending 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day of protein, dairy, and healthy fats. So basically, you would have to do the math calculations, and I'm sure they're going to put all the charts that tells you at your age, at your body weight, at this, and your exercise level, whether you're pregnant or not, all those things will be out there. Also highlighting the fruits and vegetables, and the whole concept here is that they're whole foods, because within each fruit and vegetable, we know there's a huge importance of the ORAC points, preventing oxidation and free radicals, and these fruits and vegetables need to be whole. They don't need to be, processed into something. Now, one comment I want to make here is that juice, which is something people did a lot of with fruits and vegetables, they would take the pulp, the fiber, the bulk, and everything on and just do the juice. Not a good idea. But blending a whole fruit, vegetable, etc., where you blend all of it. Like if you drink the orange, if you blend up the orange, the whole orange, and eat it, then you're getting the fiber and all the nutrients, and they all fit together. They all go well together. So there's an issue with the term processed food. And we're getting a lot of this talking about processed feed and ultra processed food. And the main concept there is we don't want to take whole grain flour, like wheat flour, and take everything out, bring it down just to the white starch, and then use that, because all of the healthier nutrients within that are then gone. Now, they are not addressing gluten at all in this. That's another step beyond what most people in the nutrition field have figured out. We understand that Dr. Wallach, as a pathologist, has looked at the linings of the intestine and shown the damage of gluten from most grains. We also have Dr. Perlmutter, a brain surgeon, brain specialist, has found the same thing. And in the heart, what's the name of the guy who did the heart? Wheat Belly, Davis. So all of these people, all these specialties have figured out the issues with wheat and with grains, with gluten, gliadin, all those things. And so that's something they have not addressed. But however, they did go in the right direction by saying 2 to 4 servings instead of, what was it, 6 or 8 to 11 servings a day of all the grains. And just one more, well, actually 2. Grains were not a food for human beings until recently. Throughout most of the history, they are a row crop. They were planted. So until people stopped hunting and gathering and started planting their own row crops and things like that, human beings were not grain eaters. And also, human beings have changed those grains. So people will say things like, well, I know they talk a lot about wheat in the Bible and some other historical documents, but that was a totally different thing. So some people do use those products. I am not going to say one way or another. To me, I'm okay with just not using them, with not using the things that have gluten, but that's an issue that is out there. So they haven't addressed the total thing, but what I think is amazing is as much as they did address, okay? Because and you can't change people and have them eat everything that they've never eaten and never eat everything they have eaten. So we got to take steps here. So that's kind of the way that whole thing is. Another big thing that I want to point out is that there is no one perfect diet for everybody. It would make no sense because we have people who live in climates that are extremely cold, where they eat cold water fish. They live along coasts or on islands where there's a huge amount of minerals. They have seafood and things like that. And there are people on the equator where they're going to have a totally different diet as long as they're getting the vitamins and minerals and everything. We can adjust our carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, are macronutrients for our lifestyle, our culture, our religion, our location on the globe. We can do all those things. And so it's not really, in my opinion, it's not our job to be telling people, you should eat this, you should not eat that, you should not eat that. When we make recommendations about things that we shouldn't eat, gluten is one of them. That's because of specific research, specific findings of causes of problems. Okay, so we're not, even this pyramid, they're not saying you have to eat this, and you can't eat that, and that. Okay, there are reasons for things that are going to be changed. But in this pyramid and everything, they're not discussing vitamins and minerals at all, really. I'm sure that when you go out, they're updating all the time, and I'm sure they're adding those requirements and things like that, probably without a lot of change. I don't know, but that's something we can work on in the future. So there's another book that I wanted to mention. It's called Unholy Trinity. And what he's doing is he's saying carbs, and I will talk about the definition of carbs again in a second. Carbs, sugar, and oils are make us fat, sick, and addicted, and how to escape their grip. And so this book, trying to think, I don't think I put the date on here of when that is, but it's newer. And so this is basically the same kind of thing that we're trying to say. And I've got a couple of graphs in here just to show you some of the research that shows the problem with oils and things like that. So this is an interesting one. Okay, so that is from 2018. That book is 2018. Obesity. You can see this bottom line here going through is called obesity. And you can see this one, vegetable oil consumption. This is from 1870 to 2018. 0% of the population, there were no vegetable oils. They hadn't been processed yet, hadn't been created yet. And it went up to 90 grams per person per day. So you have to figure that, but look at it. And 45% of the population, from 0% of the population to 45% of the population consuming these vegetable oils. That is, if you look ancestrally, that is a huge change in consumption of something. And we're seeing obesity. What is the issue with vegetable oils? Basically, when you take a plant, a grain, or a vegetable, and you squeeze it, you compact it, and you process it, a lot of these vegetable oils go through 3 steps at over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and then they come back, and then solvents and things are used to get those oils out. And the oils are a delicate thing. Fats are delicate. And so basically they're denatured. And what makes sense here is that vegetable oils that are consumed cannot be metabolized correctly, and you can't necessarily get rid of them. So they get stored in fatty tissue. and can directly lead to a fatter person because these oils can't be processed correctly compared to butter, eggs, and those kinds of things. That's a fascinating thing. And this one, again, if people decided that fat was the bad guy, we went through that whole thing, the 70s through the 90s and everything, and it was a mistake. I'll go through that in a minute too. But what I want to show here is almost 7% or 7 times higher insulin. This is the risk for a heart attack on here. Okay. It's the same for high total cholesterol or high total fat, high cholesterol, and this one is high blood pressure. This third one here, this third one here is high blood pressure. But the highest one here is insulin. So what happens is when fat was demonized, and basically what happened was money was paid to a person who was a researcher by the name of Ansel Keys in Minneapolis, and he was paid to promote vegetable oils because they had a lot of them after World War II and those kinds of products, and they wanted to make money selling them. So he was paid, and he actually changed data. He fudged data in order to make it look like cholesterol was so bad. And so what happens if you reduce fat and cholesterol? There's only one other source of calories and energy, and that is sugars, carbohydrates. Okay. So instead of blaming the huge increase in sugar, because everything that was low fat, fat free, all these diet things, they were so high in sugar that they raised insulin so high because insulin is used to get the sugar into the cells. So this became probably the worst thing that ever happened in the health of the human race, was demonizing foods that we've been eating all throughout history. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna just do a little bit more about where should we get our information and why are there these nutrient requirement books? Why does the government do this along with my pyramid and all those things? So what they're doing again is they're taking research from independent places. They're gathering it together. I talked about these before in one of the other talks. They put out these guidelines every year, every few years. This is the one that we did with horses that I worked with all the time when I was doing horse formulation and everything. And see, they don't do those very often because there isn't much money. There's a lot more money in human food and food animal diets than there is in horses. So it was 89 all the way to 2007, and that is the most current one. So almost 20 years again before that's done. I want to show you something else where people can get their nutrition information. And these are books that are written by college professors. They get together and they each do certain topics. But again, they're searching the research. So they're going out there. I have Modern Nutrition in Health and Disease from the 1950s. Then I have another version of it from about 10 or 15 years ago. And I'm actually getting a newer version from 2024. And these are like 1,600 pages long. These are summaries. They have charts and graphs and everything. Here's the concise encyclopedia of food and nutrition. And this is by a group, professors named Ensminger. And there were several of them, but they worked a lot with all these huge books, the same thing for the animals. All your farm animals, cats, dogs, horses, pets, everything. There are these huge books. And so people, again, usually the industry, in this case, which would be the food or feed industries, will take money that they make from customers and they pay people at universities. They pay them to do studies and they pay them to put these kinds of books together. And then when you want to go out and look for information, you can go out and look at those books. And then someone gets trained similar to me who has studied all this stuff and knows how to look for things. And basically, you've got to be careful to look for things, make sure there aren't conflicts of interest. Because they have to say, when they write a paper, when they do a report, they have to say who funded me. And if you see, for instance, some company, some oil company that's selling oil, and they're telling you how great oil is, that's the kind of thing you have to look out for. So that's where, that's where the whole science of everything comes in. I do have to talk about carbs here in a minute, but I think I'm going to skip these right now. That one. Okay. I'm going to just go back to carbs a little bit because this is one of my things that we really have to learn. The term carbs is misunderstood so badly. In the animal industry, we have a bunch of different names for it. But carbohydrates is short for carbs is short for carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are all things with the chemical structure C1, 8, or in other words, C6H12O6, that would be a basic sugar. So 1 to 2 to 1 of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay, so those are storage forms. There is a quick storage form, which are the starches and sugars. And that's the one that raises blood sugar or causes fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, if it's fructose. If it's glucose, it raises blood sugar. So those affect us metabolically very different. But then the other version of carbohydrates are the structural ones. And they're big, long strings. We call them fiber. And if we want to talk about nutrition, we have to define carbs. We have to do a better job of defining our carbs. We have to have soluble or starch and sugar carbohydrates separated from the fiber carbohydrates. Okay, so that's one of my big things. And I'll just list them quickly here, what they are. The soluble carbohydrates are the things we call simple sugars. Glucose, fructose, and there are a bunch of them. Those are the typical 6 carbon ones. Then we have polysaccharides, and those are glucose units with alpha bonds. There's the starch that's in plants, like corn has a lot of starch. You talk about your starchy vegetables. And then glycogen is the same kind of thing, but it's stored in animals, in your muscle. You need muscle. If you're going to exercise, you need glycogen in your muscles. But they have 2 separate kinds of bonds that hold those chemical molecules together. So they're formed a little bit differently, and they're digested and metabolized differently. They're degraded by enzymes in the foregut of a horse, small intestine, or mouth through small intestine of a human. They're called soluble. I prefer soluble for us, for people. Non-structural or non-fiber. And then the fiber carbohydrates, again, they're polysaccharides, which means lines of sugars bonded together. The digestible ones, we can't digest them with horse or human enzymes like we did the other ones. But bacteria in the hindgut or cecum or colon do digest them. And when they break them down, they turn into little short chain fats. Acetic, propionic, and butyric acid are 2, 3, and 4 carbon little bitty fats. So when you digest fiber, you are actually ending up with tiny little fats that can be used for energy. So cellulose, you've heard of. It's glucose units and that same kind of bond. And then there's another one called hemicellulose that's in most of our foods and that have fiber. That is just a different sugar, xylose units with the same bonds. And then there is one indigestible polysaccharide called lignin. You see it in tree bark. You see it in very mature plants. It's indigestible by people, horses, or bacteria. But there are certain bacteria in termites that can eat it, or fire. So those are the only things that destroy wood. When we think of a tree that's mature, It's got a lot of bark and things on it. So we have termites that can break down because of bacteria in their intestinal tract, or we can light it on fire. So anyway, back to that whole, that's one of my things that we just have to talk about as far as carbohydrates. I think that's the last one I have for now. Yeah, I don't need to go into those. Okay, so I think we want to do questions about the differences now between what the pyramid said and what we that people are considering food. So questions.
Well, Dr. Judy, I think that it is really interesting on the food pyramid where they were recommending, was it 6 to 11 servings of whole grains?
Yes.
And that was during the time that weight and obesity was rising.
Right.
So that's a
Again,
clue, right?
well, it has to do with who paid for the research. Who paid for it? If you make bread and you make pasta and you make these different things and you're funding it, those kinds of things happen. So, I mean, that's a huge part of it. But again, once people learn a technology like how to take grain apart, take the wheat germ and the bran off of it or whatever, once you learn how to do things like that, then people want to do it. They want to separate them out. But we found out pretty early on that your white products, they had to be refortified. They had to add some things back in because they knew once you take those B vitamins, the grains have the B vitamins in the wheat germ and the bran and things. And those B vitamins are the ones where you start having all these diseases I've talked about in some of my previous talks, where you start having skin symptoms, you have mental health problems, you have all these kinds of things. And so people knew when those things happened that something was wrong. So then they thought, well, we still want to do it because we know how to do it. That's kind of one of the bad things about science is if you know how to do it, you think you should do it. And then genetically modifying things. Just because you know how to do it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. And you start running into problems with the system that we were born with doesn't know how to address some of these things, like those oils were what we call denatured. It's like the difference between a raw egg, crack it, put it in the pan, and it cooks and it looks totally different. The proteins in that egg are what we call denatured. And it just so happens we can digest them both ways, and so can animals for the most part. But some things like the oil get so denatured that our body doesn't know what to do with it. So
So there's another question, and the question is, what do you think the food pyramid is still lacking?
well, they haven't even tried to put all the detail into it yet. I mean, as far as they've got those major groups. So, I mean, it's just such a huge leap forward from what it was. A couple other things they did do is the whole milk issue. That's huge because milk is balanced. And there are some of these myths that people I hear all the time. Well, you wouldn't want to feed cow's milk to a human, and I'm not saying a nursing baby, but as people get older, adults, kids, whatever, because calves grow so fast, they grow, amazingly fast. They get to 1,200, 1,500 pounds in a year, but they're drinking a huge amount of milk. We drink milk according to our body weight, and we don't grow as fast. But there are things out there. But the point is, and that's another topic I want to talk about at some point, is the whole concept of milk. Because milk, when people had their own farms, they had their own milk cows, they took care of their milk. Milk itself is basically very good at not being a problem. Once it comes from the cow, it's basically healthy when it comes from the cow, unless the cow has gotten an udder infection, which isn't that common. but the milk itself is healthy, and then you do have to refrigerate it after that. But raw milk was demonized because if you have to put all the milk together, it has to travel a long distance. Then they were so worried about raw milk being bad for you. But by doing things like pasteurizing and homogenizing, again, you're getting rid of healthy bacteria in the milk when you pasteurize it. And you're
Mhm.
denaturing the fats in the milk when you homogenize it. Now, for all practical purposes, it can't be as horrible as people say it is. Otherwise, so many people in the world wouldn't live on milk and still do well on it. So it's one of those things, but that is a big thing on the new pyramid that they are talking about whole milk. Okay, why is this whole pyramid such a big deal? Who's influenced by it? Well, it's government and things are subsidized. And some of the huge things that have to follow the guidelines are the school systems. So instead of these chocolate milks where, they're not good for you, they're huge amounts of sugar, they don't have enough fat, and the low fat and non-fat milks are very bad for children. Children have to grow a brain and they need cholesterol and they need those fats to grow their bodies and their brains. So that's a huge thing going back to that. Of course, the idea of not demonizing red meat. And again, that was the whole saturated fat is bad. It was just a marketing thing telling people this is really bad. And it's so ridiculous because right before that in history, what did farmers eat? They ate bacon, they ate eggs, they ate these things that were grown on their own farm or traded with neighbors and things, and people were healthier back then. We started to get sicker when we made those changes. So things like that, I think about the pyramid are huge. And then of course proportions. I think they left the vegetables alone, but in the past, ketchup was called a vegetable. Things like that. So,
Well, my son said, "Well, Mom, you do realize that tomatoes are fruit, so I'm actually having a fruit smoothie." I'm
right,
like,
that is true. But they're considered vegetables by most, anyway, the point being, they're sweetened, they have other things added to them, probably preservatives, who knows what. And, a child eating a tomato or an apple or something is not like going and getting some ketchup out of the refrigerator, obviously. So,
no, no. And then going back to the milk and the whole milk, I am so glad that they're doing that with the whole milk. And
it's huge.
that there are still farms that offer whole raw milk. Sometimes you have to say, I'm using it for my dog or my cow. But growing up, mom always got 2% milk and I couldn't drink it. I really bothered my digestive system. But then when we got our own cow and we were milking the cow, I could drink the whole milk without any problems.
Yeah.
But that store-bought milk, I could not. And the same as today, that my body just does not like it. Next question. And this one, let's go ahead, and I've got a couple of them. This one is, it's also in regards to milk. Question is, could pasteurization and homogenizing milk contribute to the increased lactose intolerance?
Okay, I'm not sure if those two directly correlate, but I was very surprised because I'm German Scandinavian descent, both sides of the family, and my husband's family were dairy farmers in one place or another back. So my history is milk drinkers, and I still drink milk every day, have done it all my life. So, but I was very surprised to find out that if you look at the world as a whole, I think it said somewhere 15 or 19% of the world drink milk regularly as adults. So for the majority of the world, they don't. So what you have to look at is the genetics. And basically it's lactose intolerance because they don't keep the enzymes to process it. And so, but in a culture, it's my opinion, I don't know if I can prove it or not right now, but it's my opinion that if your culture, you nurse the baby and then you start on some version of milk, and you do that from the time they're young, they're less likely to have problems when they're older and when they're an adult because your body keeps doing it, is my opinion. If it's not, I mean, and that isn't necessarily going to happen for any individual person. So what you can do, milk has the highest biological value of any food. It's the most complete, has the best nutrition, period. So to replace it, it's difficult. It's difficult to have the balance and it's difficult to have the cost base to replace it. So if you're a milk person, if you're used to milk, you want to find a way to fix it. So you can get lactase. You can use the enzyme that does it for you. And that's a simple way to do it. I'm not a real fan of changing the milk itself. And I think what's happened is that the whole pasteurization and homogenation has been around for so long that whatever detrimental effects, and I agree that there are detrimental effects, people have gotten used to them and they're still better than the alternatives. And when I think of school kids, this has always been a huge thing for me when people said that, oh, I don't like milk because, it'll make your child too fat, or it's from a cow, blah, 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 all these different things. What are you going to replace it with in a school setting? That's my concern. There's nothing that you can replace milk with. So even if you have to do milk in schools and make sure that people have enzymes or something to go with it, it's much easier for kids to grow healthfully with milk. So, and I was fortunate enough, I lived right next door to my mother-in-law, and they had beef cattle, but my mother-in-law and I decided to go buy a dairy cow one time, which we did. We bought a young, small dairy cow, and she milked it in the mornings and I milked it at night. We had it for a year and a half. And this was right when I was pregnant with Andrea and for a year or so after she was born. And I swear to this day, I would have a dairy cow in a heartbeat if I could do it, if I could do it again, because it's the best. I mean, we made ice cream. We made everything you can imagine. We made butter. We had enough milk with that cow for probably about 10 families. And this was a small cow. And we bred her to a beef bull. So you get, and then we sold her calves. But anyway, milk is just one of those things. It's the most balanced. And then the second best, as far as biological value, is eggs. And that makes sense because that's a fully formed chicken in 21 days, or goose, or turkey or something in 26 days. You've got the whole thing. Well, if the nutrients aren't in the egg to do that, how is that happening? Because it's in the egg. I mean, it's so crazy. If we don't use these kinds of food sources, it's just really difficult to get the same nutritional value and have things work for us. And then the other big thing with meat, with animals, people who eat animal meat, that again is better value because it's basically the same components that we need within our bodies also. A vegetable is trying to prevent us from eating it.
Yeah.
And so is a fruit, actually.
Starting with the seeds.
Yeah. Until they're mature, your fruits and vegetables don't want to be eaten. So they produce things. You've heard all kinds of things. There's oxalates and there's tannins and there's, all these things that are in them that are actually kind of poisonous to us. So that's why we either cook, or like with tomatoes, you want to wait till they're ripe. When they're green, they have things that are hard to digest, literal poisons to us. And then when they're ripe, then the animal is okay. I mean, they're okay if the animal eats it because the animal will disperse the seeds. We talk about birds sitting on a fence and, they went and ate something and then they go fly somewhere else, sit on a fence, and you get the seeds there and you can't mow along the fence. So you can look around and you can see that animals are a distribution mechanism for plants to be able to be more distributed throughout whatever location they're at. So when you think of the different things, but it seems like in most situations, people are better off if they're having a good mixture of essential things from animals and essential things from plants. And we've learned how to cook things. We don't want to overcook them. We don't want to, a lot of things, if you put them in water, you're losing vitamins and minerals when you cook them in the water. So steaming is better, just different things like that.
So you got a couple more milk questions, and then we've got an oil question. So what about fermented milk? Where would that fall?
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that's what
milk paper. I love it.
Yeah, ferment. I mean, anytime you ferment it, it's basically going to last longer. And the chemical reactions of the fermenting it's like pre-digestion. But the Mongolian tribes still use horses, and they use the milk for one of their main staple foods, and they drink it plain and raw, and then they ferment it. That's one of the things. And here's another interesting one. The soldiers like Genghis Khan and all those people that conquered the world, when they had horses, the men would literally ride the horses, and they didn't have any food with them. They would drink blood from their horses. Now imagine they could go so far, but again, that's a fairly nutritious thing. We don't condone eating it. We don't believe in eating it, and most cultures don't. But I'm just saying it's a fairly complete food that you could survive on. So people figured out things from animals, and all the different animals that you can milk, and like I've said in other talks, there are different, you can adjust animal milks to make them better for people, for kids, so that after they're done nursing, or even if for some reason they can't nurse, and that's it, it's really bad if babies cannot be nursed by their mother, because it's the whole immune system. It's not just the milk and the nutrients. It's the whole immune system that is completely ignored with a so-called formula. So that's another topic.
Right. The colostrum is part of that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of important stuff. So the next one is, what's the deal about using goat's milk being better for you?
Well, it's better than cow's milk without being adjusted. It's just got a different nutrient profile. So if you're trying to replace human milk, one of the best things is horse milk, but people don't commercially have that available. But horse milk is very close to human. Goat's milk, you have to adjust it less. Cow's milk has more fat and less sugar, and it's just a little bit of, it's a different balance. And before I forget, on sugar, milk sugar, when people go through and they look at milk and they say it's a horrible thing because it's got so much sugar, milk sugar is digested completely differently. It doesn't raise your blood sugar. It can get absorbed at the very beginning of the digestive tract. Like for a baby, they're nursing on their mom, they're drinking milk, and that sugar doesn't have to go through their digestive tract. It starts getting absorbed right away in the mouth and the early digestive tract. So again, a newborn baby doesn't have a developed digestive system yet. And there are components in milk. This is fascinating, I think. There are components in milk that are in there to feed the bacteria as the baby, the baby's digestive tract does start having its own bacteria and everything. There are components in the milk that aren't even for the baby. They're for the bacteria in the baby. Mother Nature. Pretty amazing.
Mother Nature. Mother Nature. I have a friend that said, don't drink cow's milk. It makes baby cows fat. And I'm thinking, okay, baby cows, they're growing, they're strong, they've got amazing muscle tone, strong bones, and they taste really good.
And they're mature in a very short time.
They do mature in a very short time. But
again,
depending on the breed, you're getting 2 gallons to 8 gallons a day per cow. We're drinking cups not
Right.
gallons
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that.
we drink, and the children, if we're talking about babies and children, 10 pounds to 20 pounds to 50 pounds compared to what an average big Holstein dairy cow is probably born at 140, 150 pounds. I mean, horses are
Yeah,
around 100. So, and then they're going to go from that to 12 or 1500 or something in 8 months, 12 months.
and that's their genetic makeup. They're
Yes,
meant to be.
exactly. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
still, I mean, and milk is also 70% water. So think about that, everybody.
hydration,
Yeah. I mean, it's so
hydration.
nice that the mom brings the water with because the baby would need to go to the water and the whole herd might not be near the water. So I
Yeah.
think, although there was one thing that used to bother me when my sister had her kids, and the doctor told her that the milk was the only thing they needed, and she should not give them any water or any other liquids. And I was like,
Mm.
no way, because the environment that baby's in, what if it's super hot and they're sweating? It made no logical sense. No, you don't want to give them so much water that they don't drink all the milk they need as a nursing baby, but you got to take into consideration the environment. Again, that was a doctor's recommendation. And of course, I had to put my 2 cents in. I mean, my nephews are what? Let's see, they're in their 30s at this point. So that was a while ago. But, I
Yeah.
mean, people have ideas, they're not necessarily right. So we're not going to bash people, but just the idea, common sense.
Common sense. All right. I think we got one more question and then we're going to call it a day, Dr. Judy. The question is coming from Olga. She wants to know, will blanching almonds in boiling water for 30 to 40 seconds spoil the oils in them?
I don't think so. It's common to blanch almonds and to get the outside, membrane off it and stuff. So it's a pretty common procedure, and I'm not aware of it. I could look it up, but I'm not aware of it causing a problem.
All right. Oh, let's do one more. And this is coming from Robert. He says, does raw milk negatively affect people with the C word? The
More than likely,
CAN.
yeah, more likely it's the other way around. More than likely. In other words, it would be helpful rather than harmful.
Harmful. All right. Well, Dr. Judy, thank you so much. One thing that I wanted to point out is how you pointed out how to find your resources, how to use resources that are not being funded
Biased.
by yeah, resources that are unbiased. So thank you so much for that, everybody. Let's give it up for Dr. Judy Reynolds. If you would like to get a hold
Thank
of
you.
Dr. Judy, how would you like people to get a hold of you if they have questions for you?
My email is DRJUDYREYNOLDS. It's spelled right on the Zoom thing there. And so email me there and put in your subject line DWD or Daily with Doc so that I know it's a question from someone, because I get so many emails, it's really hard to keep up with them all. And basically what I do for people is go through what they're doing, answer questions, and just kind of help people get through Dr. Wallach's basic recommendations. Best place for resources for all you guys is Dr. Wallach's books. Pick the order you want to buy them in. They're not expensive at all compared to the amount of, excuse me, research that he put into those books is unbelievable. That's the first best place. And then, like I said, there are books all over the place. You got to be really careful with what I call the one rat study or the one person research. You have one person, he went out there, maybe got over some bad disease or something, and then is giving the advice. That's fine. That worked for that person. But that person is not necessarily an expert on those kinds of things. But there are people out there that are experts within their field. So, I love it. I've got thousands of books. for each different thing, I am going through a bunch of different sources and pulling things together. And the reason I know you got to be really careful with sources is that I know you can go to one book and it'll tell you one thing, and another book will tell you the absolute opposite. That's the whole thing about being a meat eater or a vegan or whatever. Nobody has to be one of any of those things. And there are benefits and detriments to doing any fad type diet. So we want to get our nutrient needs met, get our vitamins and minerals and everything. But I am glad to talk to people and try to get them on the path, and I help as much as I can. So that's the best way to reach me.
And Dr. Judy is also a certified holistic health coach and an independent distributor with Longevity. So folks, if you're not working with somebody and you feel like you may be connected, intellectually on the same level, and you want to get into the longevity business, I'm just throwing it out there. Dr. Judy is amazing. So thank you, everybody.
I'm always looking for people who love nutrition, want to work with kids, animals. It's what I do. I mean, I retired a long time ago, so I could be sitting around doing nothing, I guess, but what fun is that?
Well, I'm glad you're not. I'm glad.
Thank you.
If we could get the co-hosts up on the screen with us, I am just so thankful that we have more people that are like-minded who love helping others and making sure that they're getting information to help them be their best self. Today we have with us Albert joining us from South Africa, letting people in. Thank you so much, Albert. And we have Sherry, part of my tech crew, as she's keeping an eye on the platforms, bringing questions to the Zoom, putting them in so I can read them. Thank you, Sherry. And we have Rod keeping an eye on things for us also. We have Marilyn, which folks, if you're here live with us, which you're welcome to be, going through the registration process, go to zoom.dailywithdoc.com. We are live Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 3 to 4 Eastern. But we have Marilyn, who is putting information into the chat and doing dictation and helping you take notes. So thank you so much, Marilyn, for all that you do. We have AJ, who is a digital marketing manager and helping us to get everything set up and broadcast so that people can actually hear the information that they need to hear, because there's so much information out there that's disempowering. We want to make sure that people realize how empowered they really are. And also we have Ruth Ellen, my executive production manager, helping to keep us all in line, taking the Zoom stream, putting the graphics on it. And if you're watching us on any of the different platforms, it's because it's going through Ruth Ellen first before it comes to you. So thank you so much, Ruth Ellen, for all that you do and the marketing that you do to help let people know who was going to be on our show on any particular day and how they can also get connected. So folks, again, if you were referred to somebody or referred to this program by somebody specific, make sure that you get back with them. Tell them thank you. Let them know exactly what you heard that really was an aha moment for you, because I know they have an aha moment that they would share with you as well. They're going to be your number one contact. But if you found this program on your own, you've never tried any of the longevity products, which folks, if you're looking for a solid foundation of the 90 essential nutrients, don't look any farther. Get back with the person that shared this program with you, or call one of our certified holistic health coaches who, if you've never tried any of the products before, at 855-949-3377, or you can go to 90.dailywithdoc.com. That takes you to the healthy body packs, where you can choose. If you've got some brain and heart issues, choose the brain and heart pack. If you've got some blood sugar issues, choose the blood sugar pack. If you've got digestive issues, start with the digestive pack. If you don't have any issues and you want to just stay healthy, start with the Healthy Body Start Pack. We keep it really, really simple, and we have Longevity and Dr. Wallach to thank for that. So again, have a fantastic day. Be empowered. Don't forget, tomorrow we have Pharmacist Fridays, where we're going to have pharmacist Ben Fuchs, and I believe we're going to be doing mostly questions and answers. So make sure that you bring your questions. If you're not able to join us live, email those questions to questions@dailywithdoc.com. Again, that's questions@dailywithdoc.com. And if you want more information about the coaching course, go to coach.dailywithdoc.com. So folks, have a fantastic day. Again, my name is Becca Dukes. Thank you, Dr. Judy Reynolds, for being our guest today and going deeper into the history of the food pyramid, which now it's finally getting closer to the way it should be. So until next time, bye for now. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach.